All right, everyone see it on the screen just fine?
Yep.
All right, so we will dig in. You may have heard bits and pieces of this over the past, not even very long, less than a year. We started last summer where it kind of randomly popped up. But over the last 6 months or more, we've been kind of tweaking it, polishing it, kind of trying to get a vision of what the project is and what it could be for the Como neighborhood. So we're calling it the Como Neighborhood Historical Project. And our vision of this through various discussions with people and or just people with energy and willing to move forward is to explore the history of Como D10 neighborhoods from the realization that our past shapes our future. We'll use the Know Your Como platform to collect oral histories, documented memories, research stories of the people and institutions in the community. We'd also like to use that information then to create walking tours of each sub-district that highlight these historic places and institutions. We are going to hold informed community conversations regarding our history and the impact on our community. And this is a takeoff or a continuation of the racial covenants discussions that we've been having. And we'd like to ultimately acknowledge our past and recognize the significance of it with public art and historical signage. What we're really looking at is Como is a neighborhood with lots and lots of institutions in it. And we're also like, oh, Como Park. So everyone does history on Como Park, or they know about the fairgrounds. But there's pretty significant historical information about in the neighborhood based on industries that have been around and things like that. So this project hopes to explore some of that. It evolved from the background of, like I mentioned back in September, Sarah's group with some of the racial covenant work and committee met up with the Midway Garden Club that I'm a member of. And what we were looking at is possibly putting a educational art reflective bench at the gardens that are on Midway Parkway, because one of them was labeled the Frankson Garden, and you're all aware of the Frankson covenants, things of that have been occurring. And so we were trying to think, hey, this would be a really cool way to find out more about the neighborhood, you know, really explore the covenant pieces, we've been trying for 6 months or more to really figure out what we're doing. It seems like a really good idea to get some history of whether it's the Frankson addition, the covenants, all these things have been gelling around for a while. So we just, you know, like, okay, let's see if we can do something and get some money to do this. We tried to fill out a grant proposal for the Minnesota Historical Society Legacy Grant for a public art meditation bench and historical signage. We got some really good feedback from them about our grant proposal, and they really liked the idea, but we weren't awarded funding. Mostly because it hadn't been fleshed out as to, you know, what are our goals, what are our visions, what are we looking forward, who's going to do it, what are they going to do, how are they going to do it. So we've kind of thought we'd throw it, learn some things. So we're kind of doing a chicken and egg analysis of getting information on this project and putting it together. And I think we're really close to having with this presentation and with some other things going on, a really solid project that we hope D10 will support for us. So other background is that last September at the Ice Cream Social, St. Kate's professors Rachel Newert and Christine West showed some research that they presented in July about the census data and who actually lived in the Como area, a little bit related to the racial covenants, because they had already been working on that. So one of the members of Janet Pope reached out to them in early October to say, hey, you know, could we do something together on history? And so we started meeting then with the St. Kate's folks. They also work on the Welcoming the Dear Neighbor project that's linked to the Mapping Prejudice project. They're really interested in working with communities to explore how housing and economic inequality developed over time in St. Paul and Ramsey County. And with our covenants, this might be a really good focus snapshot for them. And St. Kate's also has a lot of student work that they do, and they work with the community on civic engagement through course-based student work. So as we started talking with them, they have a team of professors that design coursework around neighborhood projects and things like that. And this history of one area, District 10 in St. Paul, can be something that they're looking at incorporating into some of their coursework. So we're kind of trying to meet their needs, trying to meet our needs by having, you know, free help to do some of this historic work. So we've been meeting with them quite a bit. To give you an idea of what we've been doing, we have the timeline that we've been looking at. And so in December, we put together a timeline. We looked at a list of topics that we could research. Some of that information came from a 1980s project from the SHPO, which is the State Historic Society, where they did a small area plan for the Como area. And so we kind of looked at housing and businesses that they had on that particular site. And we've been starting to create like kind of a master list of what we could possibly do research on. Sunday series was people were looking for topics on that. And so we suggested, based on some of our discussions, the author for the Booth Girls, and she presented very well. And then also our St. Kate's students who have been doing some research presented their data at one of the Sunday series. So in February, we also gave St. Kate's this list of what we thought for research topics. And then we met again with them for their feedback and what they would be interested in to see where we could overlap. And like I mentioned, Ava and Christine presented their census data on the Sunday series presentation. And so we found some places where we have overlap. And in March, those two presentations occurred. And we received, we were hoping to receive St. Kate's timeline for improvements. And we didn't quite get that yet, but we did find out just today that this whole project for their summer scholars, that their project was accepted for the summer. So they will have students who'll be able to take on work of this project. Plus there's also some other grad students who are already digging into some specific topics for us. So after this meeting, if people think this is a good presentation or a good project to move forward with our collaboration with St. Kate's, we'll set up a meeting and we'll set up some specific, you know, see where they're at and move forward there. So that gets us to April here, where we are presenting this information to first the Neighborhood Relations Committee, and we can re-present it if necessary to the D10 board. And then if we can get everything worked out with St. Kate's, we would have like a table at the first D10 event in April as a rollout to try and get names for oral history interviews for people in the neighborhood that might give really good information about what it was like back then or something. It could be also personal stories in addition to tell us what businesses were around, different things like that. We haven't, we don't really have any specifics on that because it'll really be based on who is most interested in presenting and who we presenting in the sense of giving their stories out and getting a list of people who would be good people to interview for the history of the Como neighborhood. That leads us to May, where hopefully we'll have names of people we can collect. And then we'd like to give St. Kate's a walking tour of the neighborhood, just to get some idea of some of the places here so they can get to know the neighborhood. I suspect in June, we'll start the oral history interviews with the St. Kate's students. We'll have some information at the ice cream social, maybe even some sort of like oral history booth that we could have people walk up and tell a story and we can record it. We'll figure out something with the students there. And then we'll discuss in August, you know, where do we go from here? How do we store it? And, you know, we'll redo another timeline to see what our next steps are. So letting you know where we are now, if we'd scroll down a little bit more. So we've identified the initial overlapping interest between the two. The St. Kate students will begin researching history in these topics that include women, children, orphanages, and care centers. Other topics that fall into a racial covenants, Frankson's history, and maybe real estate development, advertising. And then a third topic, possibly schools, boundary lines, locations, and maybe charter school locations. And then again, St. Kate students will be preparing for oral history interviews for the spring summer 2022, their summer scholars program. And then D10 and neighborhood relations will begin working on community outreach for there. From there, where we want to go with this is the next slide. And that's, we really want to try and have some fun with the community and learn more about the neighborhood, create community activity opportunities, and be open to community ideas. Once we, you know, are at the activity areas like the April 30th, what are people bringing when they see this and see what's presented? We want to use St. Kate's research to hold community conversations about racial covenants and redlining, to create walking tours in each subdistrict, to highlight neighborhood historical significance through public art and historical signage. And then by using, this may be more the fall and into winter, by using St. Kate's technical skills, create data visualization of census and other research we come across so that it can be on the website and see how over time from the 1880s to currently, how did the little Como District 10 get settled. Also produce mapping platform for the walking tours and assist D10 in hosting the oral histories on the D10 website. So I hope this gives you an idea of where we've focused our activity primarily on the history of D10 that could overlap with the Know Your Como, but we picture kind of the Know Your Como as a little bit more current people, current information, where this is a project using the resources of St. Kate's and or any other District 10 folks that are interested in creating a more historic history of the area that we can document. Any questions?
I remember when you first presented on this, and it's so cool to see how much you've fleshed it out since then. I'm just so excited about the potential for this project. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad, you know, we're seeing that too, that it's like, yeah, we had this idea, but yeah, trying to get it down. And once you have to write it out, it really helps focus ideas. So I'm glad that's noticeable. Thank you.
Laura, do you know how much the grant was for that we didn't get?
It was their $10,000 grants that they do quarterly for projects. And I suspect that we will be requesting one at some point in time, as we, keep moving forward as to topics, or maybe a topic is really big and we want to hire a specific historian to work on one. Or when it comes to the signage, I personally have some ideas of what the signage could be and look like. We'd have to get the historical information focused, documented, and we had a really nice conversation and questions with Kim after her Booth Girls presentation. So maybe we hire her to write the story of Booth Brown, and specific to the building and the story, not necessarily her mother's and her story, but the institution story there. And then maybe her documentation would be on a sign that we get put out in front of Booth Brown as part of a walking tour and stuff like that. So we're hoping that between a grant like that, at least these are my views now. We haven't really talked it, but we have the Historical Society grant. There's STAR culture grants that are out right now, that I think the more this project moves, we can say, okay, now we know we want to do these 4 things. We need this amount of money. So those are some of the next stages of the project, I think, over the next couple of years, that we can get some money in and see where to really focus it. What can we get from St. Kate's first off? And then what can we get after that to flesh some of this stuff out?
So by not getting the grant, the only thing we're missing right now is we wouldn't have money for the bench or the signage, correct?
Correct.
It won't slow us down until we reapply and need the money.
Correct. And so far too, I don't know if St. Kate's, where they get their funding per se for their work, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have their own grant machine going that would request money from the Historical Society or whatever for various projects to get funding coming in. But I'm sure over time there'll be some joint grant writing or whatever as we go through that.
And it'll be a discussion point further on in the agenda, but on the 23rd of April, we're hosting one part of the St. Paul citywide cleanup that you could also table at if you wanted to get a large audience of people in.
Good point.
Something to keep in mind for the Cultural Star Grant that, as you said, is actually out right now, is the Star Grant does have matching required for it, but this work that St. Kate's is doing for us, if they could put a dollar value on it, that I know that I've gotten the Star Grant downtown before, and we used educational collateral as the matching on that grant. So that's something to keep in mind if we were ready for that. But
that's a really good point, because they do it twice a year. And so I don't think we're ready for it right now, but it might be something really good for the fall. So yeah, I think as we're fleshing this out, the same with the Historic Society, it was a matter of really getting it, what are our vision statements? What are we going through? What are we really trying to do? And we also had the internal discussion of like, okay, we don't want to, Know Your Como is working really great and has a group of people working along, and we don't want to step on any of those toes or whatever, but Know Your Como is a platform where we can host information, whether it's about people or places or things. And this is maybe more of a historic people, historic places, or they could be current places too, but what was the history of that building that's now a local resident is a family home now, but it used to be a church and it used to be a community center. So this is more like fleshing out some of those details of those locations and stuff.
Or pardon me if you already mentioned this, but when you keep referring to who else is working with you on this?
Marcia Anderson, who I tried to get her to pop in on this, but she's busy. She just got back from Tucson. And Sarah has been doing quite a bit of work. So the three of us have been kind of spearheading the information to move this forward. And then, like I mentioned, Janet Pope had made the original connections to St. Kate's, but she had some family situations, so she had to back off of that. And so we just kept up with the meetings with the St. Kate's folks. We've had a couple other neighborhood relation meetings where we've had some other neighborhood or neighbors weigh in on some of the information. And I think we'll just, keep doing that to see who shows up at, neighborhood relations meetings. But it's not excluding anyone by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a volunteer project, and it all depends how much time and energy you have to put into it. And I do have some at this point in time, and I'm interested in the project, so.
That kind of leads into my next question. I agree with Morgan. This has really come a long ways. It's really great to see how well thought out it is. With the number of people working and what you're going to be doing in the next few months, do you have a concern that you're overextended at all?
I don't think so, mostly because the work is going to be done by the St. Kate's students. And it is, we did discuss that, I think, at one of the meetings we had early with that, is that both community volunteerism and student college projects are not on a fast track of anything by any imagination. And no one, it's a project that is not intended to necessarily have an end date per se. So it's, if you overextend yourself, nothing will get done. But it's more of a keep plodding along and see who's interested, and we'll just kind of keep moving it along. I think we're creating a framework so that different people at different times can be interested in it, or one little tiny piece of it that they might want to research or do something about. Or we did talk a little bit about, we created, it happens that Sarah and I both live in the same neighborhood. So we, walked around the neighborhood, and these were a lot of historic sites on in our section 1 here, our little sub-district 1, that we could just walk around and see in our neighborhood. But we might need some people from District 2, which Marcia happens to be in that one. Okay, Marcia, could you and a couple friends walk around this summer, and you write on a list of places you think are cool, and that'll be the start of, a little tiny project, make a walking path in whichever area it is. So I think we could work on chunking the project so that, little groups can be on for a little period of time if they want to stick on longer or do something else. It's very open and flexible, so.
Thank you.
So that there's an action item here. Is the action item to bring it to the larger board? Like, can anybody explain to me what?
Yeah, the action item will be to get the we have to have an agreement with St. Kate's so the students can work with us. We should probably have that up for folks to look at. But yeah, that's what the action item will be for D10 to approve us, basically Shevik signing the agreement so we can work with St. Kate's.
And is there any staff oversight or things that need to happen with these students, or is that all happening through you guys?
That will be, I guess we'd have to talk about that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think primary oversight is, according to the contract, is through St. Kate's, but they'll have a point person to, topics or things like that. And for me, in my mind, I'm committed at least 2 years, if not more, to, working this through and getting it so that we get some of the objectives accomplished, because I think it's really cool and interesting. So, so I can be the point person. reaching out, depending on the event, maybe there's an event that we have some students there. So maybe Sarah's at that event. So she's the person that they would refer to at that event. So again, we'll see, try with flexibility for everyone so no one's overwhelmed, but I'm willing to step up and take responsibility for certain items and things like that.
Okay. Forgive me, Sarah. Do we need to, we're just bringing this, the action item is going to be brought to the larger board. We don't have to do anything now.
Do we need to approve the action item if it comes out of our committee? So we would have to approve of it here. Otherwise, I can just also bring it to the board. I don't know if it really,
Are there enough of us to do that?
there is enough of us, yeah.
Well, should we just do that? So the board just has to
Sure, yeah.
approve our thing?
Is there a link to the action item or anything?
Not to this one, no. But
I haven't seen it at all, so I'm not really sure what you guys are talking about.
yeah, let me pull up the St. Kate's agreement. Let me find it one second.
Sounds like a very cool project. I'm really interested in it, so I'm excited to see it take its next steps.
But Sarah, to be clear, there's not a prepared action item, filled out form.
No, it's not. It would, no.
But the basics of it are the board of directors supports the historical project and approves signing the partnership agreement with St. Kate's.
Yeah, and here is, how can I share it with everybody? Would it be easier if I just email it? It's a long contract.
I don't think they need to see that per se, do they? Or just what Shevik just said, does someone make a motion that the board approves working with this or something? You guys know better than that. That's where I back off on all this official committee business.
I think.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on anything if I didn't know what we were agreeing to or what we were asking others to agree to.
So
I'm not on this board that much longer, so I wouldn't want to commit someone else to do work that yeah, you get it.
do people feel comfortable if we vote to take it into a conversation for the larger board with the understanding that we're going to send that contract out for people to review before it's formally approved? So we're more or less voting today to agree to have it be looked at as a voting item at
For the
next
whole board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would give people time to review the contract before that voting happens. Does that make sense, Kevin? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me too.
So do we need to do the Robert's rule thing?
I think we do.
Okay, who wants to move to make this action item to review the partnership with St. Kate's and the next steps for?
So I guess I can move, or what?
I said so moved.
Okay, Matt, you got it.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else on that, or should we move gaily forward?
I do have one more comment on it. I'm very confident that the board will approve this. I've looked at the contract. I will send it in an attachment to the board along with this action item. But I just encourage Laura and Marcia and Sarah to start preparing basically what do you want on the D10 website? Because I want to get this up as soon as the board approves it. I can have the page made and just wait to launch it even so. For the website, there's room on the website to to give like more context. It probably shouldn't be as long as the presentation file, but just like a couple paragraphs explaining what the project is and what we're hoping community members will come with. And then based on that, we can come up with an even shorter blurb for the newsletter, because I'd love to start getting it in the newsletter. Like, what is an oral history? What kind of stories are we looking for? Just so like it's a direct ask to the community members. So that's what I'm putting out there just as a comment. Like, I'm ready to copy and paste it into the formatting of the website whenever I get it, pending
Okay.
board approval.
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely do that. We've been talking about that. So
Fantastic.
Shevik, are you looking to get it tonight or?
No, not tonight. Just like if I had it by the time the board meeting came around, I would get it up the next day. But if I don't have it then, it'll get up as soon as you guys get it to me. You know? So not a huge hurry, but I'm just encouraged.
What I think we'd like to do before we do that is since St. Kate's just got their summer scholars approved, is that we plan to meet with them sometime in April here still. And so we probably wouldn't have anything ready till after we meet with them so that we don't overstep their piece of it also. So I would suspect we should be able to, we talked a little bit at a soft rollout at the April 30th event. We thought maybe we'd have like, you know, those science boards that we could put on a table and say, here's what the project is. So between now and April 30th, we should be able to pull together, you know, what we want help with, who's doing what, some sort of all those nice small condensed statements that you need. And then once we get that, it should be the same thing that we could use that same wording and put it on the website also. How does that sound? So that's kind of the timing I'm thinking relative for rolling it out to the rest of the neighborhood folks.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Oh, no worries. Thanks.